A quick reminder, if you're going to the banquet tonight, the reception starts at 6:30 at the Alta Club, and the banquet itself will start around 7:15. So be there, be square. And now we're going to hear from our sister Saline Lakes, starting with Mono Lake. You want to come up? Thank you. Thank you, Rob.
All right. Okay, so use this one. Hi, everybody. So we're going to take a little trip. We're going to lift up and away from Great Salt Lake and head to some other lakes, saline lakes and programs and research. I do want to thank Lynn. I'm going to take Rob's cue. I'll just thank Lynn for the amazing conference. It's an honor to be here. I think it's my 20th or 20 years of participating, 10th conference maybe, so it's really just awesome to be here. I am Jeff McQuilkin. I'm the Executive Director at the Mono Lake Committee. Glad to be back to share the bit of the Mono Lake story here. Just to start, the Mono Lake Committee is a nonprofit organization. We're dedicated to protection and restoration of Mono Lake and its tributary streams and surrounding lands, and to pursuing education and science programs that share and enhance our understanding of these special places. We were founded back in 1978. We have about 16,000 members, so a citizen-based group. 16,000 members across California, the Great Basin, some right here in Salt Lake City. If you're a Mono Lake Committee member, thank you. Even around the world. Really representing people who want to be sure that the unique and inspiring and internationally significant resources at Mono Lake are protected for future generations. So I'll talk some about where things are. It's a very long story at Mono Lake, but to get there, let's take a little bit of a look at the background as well. If you haven't had the chance to be to Mono Lake, we are your sister lake on the west side of the Great Basin with our up against the edge of the Sierra Nevada. Always fun to be here seeing the Wasatch. And the Mono Lake ecosystem is a lot like you might recognize from Great Salt Lake. Brine shrimp, alkali flies. We do have our own unique species of brine shrimp endemic to Mono Lake because of the high alkalinity there, Artemia monica. A lot of critical habitat for migratory and nesting birds that rely on the great abundance of food resources at the lake. I should say, we'll go back one and just acknowledge, you know, Mono Lake is a little bit smaller than Great Salt Lake, but aren't all of the other saline lakes a little bit smaller? So very big for us, one of the biggest lakes in California, but 70 square miles, so Great Salt Lake's maybe 15 times the size. So some of the numbers I talk about might not, you know, seem like they match up with Great Salt Lake. We weren't expecting them to, but we're providing some critical habitat in a special place on the flyway for migratory birds. California gulls do nest at Mono Lake. We've got Wilson's phalaropes, redneck phalaropes. Be hearing more about those. Beautiful tufa towers at Mono Lake, a unique formation, calcium carbonate formation due to the lake's alkaline water properties, are showing a fossilized spring where fresh water has come into the lake. Why are you seeing them here? Because the lake is missing where they formed and they've been revealed. Lots of eared grebes, 1 million plus, coming through on the fall migration as well. I'd love to talk about all of those for the whole talk, but this is a knowledgeable room about migratory birds that are looking for salt lakes. Tributary streams, a lot smaller area, so the streams are coming straight from the high Sierra. You can see in the background there and right down to Mono Lake, so fishery habitat, riparian habitat, an important part of the ecosystem right adjacent to the lake. Lots of visitation, lots of attractions at the lake, bird watching, photography, of course, a lot of recreation, kayaking, paddling, even swimming in the lake, a place that's remote in California, but really accessible. San Francisco, Los Angeles, Reno, if you're looking for a vacation to get out of town, you might find yourself at Mono Lake with a chance to recharge. Okay, so that would be great, but we've got some problems at Mono Lake, just like all salt lakes do, and let me run you through that real quickly. If you don't know this story, Mono Lake has been heavily impacted by the city of Los Angeles, 300 plus miles to the south, building what's described here as a Titanic project designed to give the city a river. That's from the LA Times, LA Daily Times back in the beginning of the 1900s. And so this is the Los Angeles Aqueduct. It's designed to take water from the eastern Sierra region, the Mono Basin, and the Owens Valley, and transport it to Southern California. So we really have a this is Los Angeles down here, and we have a really extended watershed by virtue of this water from our part of California being transported all the way down to the city. Some beautiful parallels and a permanent connection via the aqueduct, but how you manage it and how much water moves south is really the issue at Mono Lake has highlighted. So major tributaries flowing into Mono Lake were diverted into the Los Angeles Aqueduct, which was constructed in the early 1900s, went into operation in 1941 in the Mono Basin, earlier in the Owens Valley. And you can see some of the immediate impacts. Lee Vining Creek here, just a trickle of water back in the 1970s. This is a photo of Rush Creek showing the dry stream bed. So when diversions began, they were total diversions to capture the full flow of those streams. In addition, the aqueduct does pick up some groundwater from the Mono Basin as the tunnel that was constructed 13 miles underneath the volcanic mountain chain, a rather remarkable feat of engineering, went through the groundwater table and has water flowing into it from the groundwater supply. So what happens when a salt lake loses its inflow? Well, it goes down, right? So this is not the full extent of Mono's decline, but a great illustration using tufa towers. You can see 1962 there on the left, 1995. Mono Lake is much deeper than Great Salt Lake. So we had 45 vertical feet of decline due to diversions at the maximum in 1982. Lost about half the volume, doubled the salinity of the lake. Here's a graph showing that plummet. We like seeing your graphics here about Great Salt Lake and inspire ours. We've been using this one to illustrate the different conditions the lake is in as it goes down. Some other impacts real quickly. The changing landscape led to the emergence of a land bridge, exposed lake bed, that would allow predators to get out to the California gull nesting islands. There was a technology fix tried here in 1978. I can see Dr. Perry evaluating its success already, which is, yeah, you could try to blow it up. It doesn't work. It's a lot of mud. It just moves around. That was a non-starter. Water is a good way to keep an island an island. A lot of exposed lake bed. PM10 particulates, air quality problem for sure, dust storms, pick up off the exposed lake bed. We've been a non-attainment area since the early 1990s, and due to some of the progress at Owens Lake in controlling those dust storms, we now often get to take the title, the crown of the worst particulate air pollution measured in the country at Mono Lake. I think we'd rather not have that award. And the loss of those riparian habitats and streams, I'm going to tell you this was lower Lee Vining Creek in the 1970s, and you might wonder where the entire creek is. That's because the creek was drawn, the habitat was gone, the riparian forest had actually collapsed by that point. So a lot of impacts, and one that has been overlooked in the past but is really important is the Mono Lake Kutsetica tribe, who are the indigenous people, the native people who have been in the Mono Basin since time immemorial, and are really centered spiritually, physically, and culturally, as the quote says, around Mono Lake itself. Charlotte Lang, the chairwoman, says this water body is so central to our lives and heritage, we must do all we can to ensure our lake and the ecosystem it supports is healthy and strong, and the tribe is still present and active today and working on these issues. Okay, so what do you do about these problems? If you're starting an organization in the 1970s, you might look something like this. We were founded by a group of scientists who had been out studying the problems at Mono Lake. Really, I think, came to a close, people knew the lake was going down, but they came to a real close awareness of how close the salinity levels were to precipitating an ecological collapse. They're rehydrating the lake here in an early ceremony. And the group is very practical. I think this maybe comes from being a group of scientists. They said, well, we've got a problem, so we'll just figure out what the solution is, and then we'll take the solution and we'll implement it, which is a normal way of doing business, right? And so the committee has always looked for water supply solutions for Los Angeles, recognizing the need people in LA have for drinking water, but that there's a lot of options there. And conservation, water efficiency, local supply solutions have always not just been good ideas, but things that we have pursued over the years. I think this is where the story diverges a little bit from Great Salt Lake and some of the fantastic collaborative work that's happening here. That's our first preference as well at Mono Lake, trying to find those solutions, trying to work with leaders in Los Angeles and California to implement them. But I'll ask you to consider the challenge we had early on in this issue. What do you do when there's a single diverter of the water that's causing the problem? They have great political power, a very large budget. They serve more people than live in the entire state of Utah as customers, and they aren't concerned about the problems that you're raising. The committee founders quite literally had meetings up here on the 15th floor, the top of the DWP headquarters. This is the Department of Water and Power headquarters in downtown LA. Talked about the problems, talked about possible solutions, talked about lake levels that would be far below the natural level but could serve to protect the ecosystem. And the answer really was, from the department, was, well, we have water rights. We have an aqueduct we built and invested in to take that water. So we're not going to change anything we do. That's the way it is. And that takes you to kind of a different place. Darren Perry yesterday, I thought, was very eloquent and reminded us that when you have Great Salt Lake or Mono Lake in decline, what you really have is a values problem. And we found it was exactly that. And we were seeking solutions, but you do have to turn to other methods if those aren't working. And in California and for Mono Lake, it's the public trust doctrine, which is quite famously established because of the Mono Lake issue in terms of California law. And it really changed the perspective of the state and the legal framework that diversions would operate under. The case against, the public trust case in California about Mono Lake was filed against the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, not the state, because they're the diverter and they were causing the impacts. And the Supreme Court identified that the human and environmental uses of Mono Lake do deserve to be taken into account. And one of the key phrases that I really like from the Mono Lake decision back in 1983 was a statement that the public trust is an affirmation of the duty of the state to protect the people's common heritage of streams, lakes, marshlands, and tidelands. And thinking about Great Salt Lake just a little bit, I mean, whatever method you're pursuing lake protection by, I think that actually captures the vision pretty well. We're all trying to work to protect a common heritage and make sure it's there for future generations. There's quite a story about the public trust, about litigation, about activism, but I'm going to just keep zipping right ahead and say that what happened as an outcome of this was that the water rights of the city were re-examined by the agency in charge of such things in California, which is the State Water Resources Control Board. This is a photo of their historic decision after about 4 years of study, 43 days of famous hearings and cross-examination, and 20, maybe 15 parties in the room. And they established a management lake level for Mono Lake designed to keep the lake in a healthy condition, resolve the air quality problems, address sort of that matrix of impacts that's represented here. So at these, we're a little higher elevation, right? 6,392 feet elevation. The decision would put the emissive lands underwater, put the islands back to being islands in terms of protecting habitat, bring the ecosystem back to a salinity where it could thrive at Mono Lake, protect cultural resources, scenic resources, and local economic activity as well. Notably, after a lot of fighting about this, all the parties, including the Department of Water and Power, said, great, okay, we have a plan. We will, this is the resolution of the Mono Lake controversy. And what the board wanted to see happen was the lake rise to 6392 because it was already lower, They figured that would take about 20 years based on the hydrologic models, and they allocated some water to flow to Los Angeles during that time. So how are we doing at Mono Lake? Well, the decision is really important because it put a floor in for lake level. If we run our hydrologic models right now and simulate continued diversions, you probably wouldn't have me here talking about Mono Lake because there really wouldn't be a Mono Lake to talk about. Lake level would be down around 6,345 feet. That'd be way past the salinity thresholds. You wouldn't be thinking about maybe traveling to the bird Chautauqua like some of you are, or stopping on your next visit. It would be a whole different world there. So that's the good news. But we have not seen the lake recover to the required level either. We're only about halfway there. It's been 30 years instead of 20. And the department's been able to divert the water that they were allocated, but then continue diverting year after year. So they've gotten more than was expected during that transition, which you can see represented in the graph. I guess I should switch sides here. I'll highlight this side now, which was what we've really, here's the shaded portion on the right, is the time since the State Water Board decision. And the lake did rebound, but since then has kind of been bouncing around, and we're not seeing a trend headed toward the management level, which would be the dashed line running across there. You can also represent it in a different way. This is our storytelling pole, and that's where the lake should be. So if you stand at the lake today, it should be about 10 feet higher than it is. So we're seeing some impacts of this. I mean, one possibility is just give it some more time, hope it works out, make some changes. But Mono Lake's been below this management level for 60 years now. I know Great Salt Lake has a lot to worry about, but it's been, what, 10, 20 years down low. So I think we're seeing the immediate impacts that you worry about from a low lake, but you're also starting to see the long-term impacts that are accumulating and causing resource damage, resource impairment happen. And so just a couple examples here. These are a long-term Artemia monitoring program going back to 1980. And you can see a declining trend in the body size of brine shrimp in Mono Lake, as well as the fecundity, and so that speaks to the food supply available to the birds that are there. We've also seen a phenomenon where the low lake level and the higher salinity is prone to stratification. Normally Mono Lake would mix annually, top to bottom, circulating nutrients. But it's been, when a big wet year comes along and there's a big freshwater influx, you'll get surface mixing, but not full mixing, and that can trap nutrients in the bottom and really throw off the dynamics of brine shrimp, the hatch cycle, the timing, and it can lead to consequences like we saw in 2024, which turns out to be the worst nesting season on record for the California gulls. Not because of predators getting out to the island, but because of a lack of food and nest abandonment that took place. So we had 20,000 gulls nesting and 324 chicks that fledged that year. That's in contrast to 11,000 fledging the prior year. And this is because the food just wasn't there for them. I can share that things have rebounded a little bit last year, but there's no reason to think this kind of trend can't repeat in the coming years. Of course, things like air quality remain a big problem as well. Dust storms continue. Okay, so what are we going to do about that? Here we are. We've got this great decision. We've got a great framework. We have a lake level that's been legally established. It's been required by the state. It's written into the water rights of the city of Los Angeles. We all agreed to do it. So it's not that hard, right? We just have to get the job done. Turns out to be very hard to do that, but that is a simple framework to work on. So we've been working quite a bit with partners and friends, some great groups that we work with in Los Angeles on education programs here, drawing some public attention to the situation. I think Mono Lake was often seen as a success story, and so people figured, well, it's all fine. So just being able to show what's happening, what the problems are, that the lake is not rising, has been important. We've had some great media press to get that word out. California is a big state. You've got to talk to city leaders, got to get their attention in all kinds of ways, got to talk with State Water Board and share the word. And We've also had some success in returning to that Department of Water and Power headquarters building downtown and working with LA leaders and talking about what are the solutions here in the 2020s that can make it possible. I kind of glossed over the obvious, but if the lake's not on a rising trend, the solution would be, can we do a pop quiz for get more water to the lake, right? So that means less diversion to Los Angeles, at least for a period of time while it's transitioning to a higher level. And this is just a photo from Department of Water and Power Commission meeting last fall. Just a great moment where a big project that the city has invested in that's being constructed right now to recycle water and use that for groundwater recharge. They've actually been able to figure out some engineering tricks and make it larger than anticipated. And so it provides enough water to easily replace the Mona Lake diversions and meet the needs of the city of Los Angeles. So it's going to produce about 40,000 acre feet of water, offsetting 16,000 acre feet can be used for other solutions as well. And the interesting thing about our situation is when you work with leaders in Los Angeles, there's a lot of leaders in the city of LA. So this was a really momentous moment because we had Department of Water and Power commissioners really talking about this idea. We're going to approve the funding, we're going to invest in this facility. That water can offset diversions from Mona Lake so we can meet our water rights obligations at Mona Lake as well. But we'll say that doesn't mean that the staff and the attorneys of the Department of Water and Power necessarily take that as direction to implement, and that's part of the challenge that we face right now. Richard Katz, who is the president of the commission and was really thoughtful about this, retired at the end of the year, so we lost his leadership there in that official role, but he did put these ideas down together into a letter to the State Water Board, really laying it out and letting the State Board know that as they look at the problem at Mona Lake, there's this great opportunity to implement a simple and effective solution that would get the lake to the management level. I know we're at a big lake here, so I figured I just had to take a moment to highlight, some of these volumes, because I think you guys are working on projects here perhaps that could solve this in a second. If you could just send us 16,000 acre feet a year, we're looking good. This is not a lot of water. It's not a lot of water that a project like a single water recycling project can't replace. It's also not a lot of water in the scale of what the city of Los Angeles is working with in about a 500,000, a little bit less, acre foot annual water supply. So really a lot of room for solutions. Got to figure out how to craft those. In the meantime, the State Water Board is responsible for implementing its own decision, and back in 1994, they wisely said, we have this plan, and we're going to figure out the time and the water and all these things, but if it doesn't work out, we will have a hearing, and we can change how much water is being diverted from the streams in order to get the lake up to the management level. And that's the phase that we're in right now, so I'm really getting into quite an active phase with Mona Lake, with advocacy, with science, with proceedings. The State Water Board commissioned a study from UCLA to model Mona Lake, to bring climate change considerations into that, do projections, make sure that they had good information that they could work from to go along with models and work that's been done by us and the department and others. And we just had a report delivered on that in March in Sacramento at a 5-hour full afternoon proceeding that the State Board had. UCLA presented their model. Oh, I forgot the most important part. UCLA presented their model, and one of the key findings that they presented to the board, I highlighted here, which is the existing export criteria, or in other words, the amount of water being diverted annually from the streams, is unlikely to achieve Mona Lake's long-term water level goals. So they were giving the State Board the confidence they needed to understand something has to change. They have the authority to do that. Perhaps a solution like the now retired Department of Water and Power Commissioner proposed would be the way to go. It was quite a proceeding. It was a chance for parties like ourselves and others with expertise to also speak to the modeling. We've got two Mona Lake Committee staff folks up here, Maureen and Greg. Maureen's in the room even here, so you can ask her modeling questions afterward. Speaking to our modeling, the great takeaway was that actually all these different models about hydrology and water levels in Mono Lake are producing similar results. So they're delivering a consistent message, even if they're using different approaches. It was the first time that Mono Lake had been formally on the agenda of the State Water Board since the original decision. Great to have board members here thinking about Mono Lake and water inputs and outflows in the background. And we had a great chance for a lot of public input from a really wide-ranging group of folks, community groups in Los Angeles, water thinkers, Mono Lake fans, but you know, the Los Angeles Business Council, folks who are thinking about meeting obligations as part of securing water for the long term, meet the obligations of that water license. So we've got some workshops coming up. At the end of the meeting, the takeaway was that the state board members gave very clear guidance to their staff that they were seeing the problem. They wanted to start the hearing process that they had set forth for themselves by the end of the year, and they sent their staff off to gather some information, build a framework for that, and come back to get that going. And we walked out of the room thinking, this is great, cool. And about a week later, all of a sudden, we were having conversations about more workshops and more information. We were like, wow, okay, this is a different pace of activity. Because I think I might have been to a few of these issues forums where I said, well, we're waiting. It'll take about a year for this or that to happen. So now we're working in like weeks, maybe months instead of years, which is fantastic. Okay, well, to wrap up, I got two things. One is I can't help but comment on an interesting kind of new talking point I've heard at the forum this year. I've learned that Governor Cox said Great Salt Lake has to be restored to a healthy level for the Olympics by 2034, which is a fantastic deadline. I've heard several speakers say that it'll be the first story of a saline lake being protected worldwide. Maybe no community has ever restored a saline lake before. I respect that. I get it. I think we're all proud of our own lakes. I'll be honest, at Mono Lake, we have tended to feel like, or maybe even people told us, we were the first saline lake to be protected and restored. And I'm not trying to steal any credit, but thank you. But you know, thinking back to the comments yesterday, hey, look, it's kind of about having water in the lake, isn't it? We can have a lot of great plans on paper. Let's get water into these lakes. So I think what we probably want to say is some friendly competition among salt lakes, among sister lakes is a good idea here, right? So we'll take the challenge. We'll see if we get the State Water Board moving. We'll challenge Utah to get Great Salt Lake rising. We'll see where we are in a couple of years at the next Issues Forum, and maybe we should just hope for the best outcome of all, which would be a photo finish as both lakes cross that finish line together. And I'm just going to close out with saying that, you know, it's great to see young folks involved here. Education programs we do are inspiring, I think, re-energizing for all of our work. We've got some great relationships in Los Angeles and throughout California in our programs, but also working internationally with the Fowler Up Connection, Experience Ambientalia. Marina's here, who just got an award from the Mono Lake Committee, so it's fabulous. Manomet being so involved in that. So these are things that inspire us, and the connections really are so good. I think this forum resulted in a very special group of people visiting us in October of last year to hear about what was going on at Mono Lake. And we've got this special delegation from Utah right here, hearing from one of the Kutsetica tribal elders about alkali flies and pupa. You guys want to help me identify, right? I think we've got Joel Ferry there, right? Laura Vernon, John Luff's there, Christine's in the photo. We even have a special guest out here, Candace, making a tufa down at the lake shore. So we can talk about exchanging information. It's great to actually be doing it, and really appreciate being here today. Yeah. Thank you.
Awesome. So, bro, And so everyone knows this, obviously, but the work that the Mono Lake Committee did was the inspiration for the founding of Friends of Great Salt Lake. And so we look to you as an example, and you know, we're working with a demonstration of a belief system that you created for us. So thank you very much, and you know, we'll continue working together. Thank you.
We'll rise together. Time for a question. Don't see any others. Any questions? Great. Thank you very much.
Can you hear me okay? No. Now you might hear me. I'm short, so I can use the short person microphone, which is really nice. Just wave your arms if it doesn't work. So, hi everybody, it's nice to be up here again. This time I'm not telling you there's snacks or no more snacks. I'm here to give an actual talk now. And I'm really glad that you stuck around. Friday, 4 p.m. Actually a bigger crowd than I was expecting, so thank you so much. I'm giving a talk today called Pride and Particles, and I am coming to you not wearing my friend's board member hat, which I'm always proud to wear, but as senior scientist from the Great Basin Unified Air Pollution Control District in Bishop, California. So when I defended my dissertation on Great Salt Lake dust, I used Owens Lake as a cautionary tale. It's a place where water loss led to extreme dust emissions and billions of dollars have been spent trying to control the issue. It always felt distant, like a case study, not something that I was actually really connected to. This is a video that I took on my first day of PhD fieldwork in 2019. Again, when I was out at Great Salt Lake getting blasted by sand and dust, as Kevin well knows the experience, I was thinking about systems like Owens Lake from a distance. What I didn't know then was that I would eventually move out to the Owens Valley and start working on that cautionary tale myself. So this talk is a little different than the other work you may have seen me present in the past because it's from the perspective of Owens Lake. And from that perspective, it's still a cautionary tale, but not just one about dust emissions or cost. It's about what happens when a lake stops being able to do the work for us when it comes to dust suppression, and we have to take over. So Jeff already gave you a great overview of the history of water diversions in the Eastern Sierra. So before I get into it, brief story. Owens Lake was indeed a lake, and then the LA Aqueduct happened, and that aqueduct diverts Owens River water that was originally destined for Owens Lake over 200 miles south to Los Angeles. And that's what led to the conditions that we're talking about today. This map shows Owens Lake divided into dust control areas with different control measures indicated by different colors on this map. The lake is managed and monitored as a mosaic. Great Basin, my organization, is the air quality regulator, while LADWP, who Jeff already introduced you to, is the responsible party for implementing ordered dust controls due to their water gathering activities. Different areas of the lake use different approaches depending on soil textures, how well a method performs, habitat and cultural considerations. And across the lake, this looks like nearly 50 square miles of dust control measures, though a larger area, you can see here that remnant brine pool, that area is basically what remains of Owens Lake. It's mostly dry, but sometimes it can expand during wet years. And LADWP actually really wants that to be dry because it can impact their infrastructure. So if that floods, it can lead to damage of roads and other water management infrastructure that's installed out there. Kevin already walked you through the details of different dust control measures that we use at Owens Lake earlier on Wednesday. So instead of going by method today, I'm gonna try to tell a story of how this works in practice. And the story is going to be about this area in the black square here called T29. Very creative name. And going back in time, T29 has been managed in several different ways. Starting with not at all. Here we see what the lake looked like in 1995 before the first dust controls were ordered and implemented at Owens Lake. I apologize, I'm going to gloss over this time period, but know that it requires years and years of legal battles, really hard work, and I can't not mention some pretty savvy engineering teams. So no controls in this 1995 image, but moving, Oh, I'm so sorry. Is this better? Yes? Oh, thank you. So moving forward in time, there was the emergence of infrastructure. Here, T29 is starting out as a very large cell designed for shallow flooding. And in this setup, if any part of the surface became emissive, you would have to flood the entire cell to stay in compliance. And what I mean by compliance is that 75% of the area should be wet or saturated. And that's something that used to be checked by flyovers, and these days it's checked using remote sensing. That's done by my next door neighbor at work. Just for context, our office is in an old motel, so it's kind of fun. This meant using more water than was necessary in a lot of areas in order to fix problems. And another problem is that because T29 is relatively sandy, water drains pretty quickly compared to other dust control areas with finer textures. So the first adjustment that was made was dividing the cell into smaller cells so that water could be applied more efficiently across problem areas. And that makes the little angry water droplet go away a little bit, but shallow flooding is still a super intense, water-intensive dust control measure. I'm going to zoom in on the changes in that area. That's T29 in the red box. And one of my coworkers was able to find a flyover photo of T29 from that time period. Obviously, there's an obstacle in the way, so I'm going to show you this picture that was taken last fall. Because shallow flooding is so water-intensive, is the most water-intensive form of dust control, it's great for bird habitat, and it's obviously great to see water in what is supposed to be a lake. But thinking about the mission of air quality and dust control, Great Basin and LADWP both did want to add some more water neutral methods to the dust control options menu. So these additional methods were approved in 2016. And they just needed to be backed up by shallow flooding because we already know that worked. So the very first method that DWP decided to implement at T29, its new makeover, was tillage. Tillage is based on a different idea. So instead of keeping the surface saturated, you are not focusing on maintaining moisture, you're creating surface roughness to reduce wind erosion of the exposed lakebed sediments. And this was appealing for T29 because it's less water intensive, it's generally low cost. Kevin did mention on Wednesday that it does require more maintenance, so there's more boots on the ground, more checks required. And this is the same for compliance as well as maintenance. So for tillage, compliance is not just 75% wet, it's evaluated through LiDAR surveys of ridge height and spacing. There's also field-based testing of clods, so basically how well soil aggregates hold together when exposed to stress. There's increased sand flux monitoring at tillage sites, and then there's a few other techniques that are implemented in terms of compliance. So when we think about dust mitigation, and when I thought about dust mitigation before I went to Owens Lake, I was really always thinking about the operational side, what tools are required, what resources are required. But there's this whole other component that Great Basin is responsible for, which is the compliance testing. And that requires a lot of time and resources as well. I can't remember who took this photo back during that trip that Jeff was just talking about, but it's me, Kevin, and Joel Ferry examining tillage at Owens Lake. And this is not at T29, it's a different area. And it's kind of funny because when my coworker sent me that picture of T29 tillage, he was like, oh, yuck, don't show them that. That's disgusting. That's terrible tillage. But actually in that photo where he goes, oh, yeah, that's good tillage, I believe Joel was just in the middle of saying, yuck, we do not want this at Great Salt Lake. It is disgusting. So, and that's fair because tillage has no habitat value, no cultural value, but nevertheless, it's cost effective and it can work really well in some areas. However, I did mention earlier that T29 is pretty sandy, and yeah, my coworkers really don't like how that looks with it being so sandy. So as you can imagine, it didn't work really well at T29. It started looking something like this. The mounds eroded quickly. The surface didn't maintain the structure needed to suppress dust. So back to the drawing board, the next selection was brine. That's T29 in its current form. It's a brine area with some shallow flooding components as well. So back to this picture I was showing earlier, that was taken last fall after a big precipitation event and after there had been some manual flooding as well. On the ground, brine can look like this. It's really pretty. We have some areas of really thick, nice evaporite crust that can come in colors of pink, orange. I get to manage the brine compliance control program at Great Basin, and we have a slogan that brine is beautiful. There's even team logos. They had that before I got there, so they were weird before I arrived. And it's really a cool thing. As you can see in this picture, brine compliance does involve some boots on the ground checks. It's largely completed on foot, but then there's also some assistance from remote sensing. And an area is considered compliant and in brine cells when at least 75% of the surface is either wet or it is covered with evaporite crust that is 1.5 centimeters or thicker, or capillary crust that is 10 centimeters or thicker. Capillary crust doesn't hold together as well, less salty, easier to break down. So that's a lot of the stuff that we have at Farmington Bay, if you've been out there. And and then at the end of the brine compliance season, we map the different areas and summarize how much capillary crust, how much evaporite crust is present. So at T29, we moved from flooding to tillage and then to brine, and each step was a response to how the surface was actually behaving. Regardless of how much everyone wanted the current protocol to be the thing that lasted forever, and they never had to change anything ever again. Because it's clear that some approaches, what became clear over time is that some approaches work better in some places than others. So if we zoom back out from T29, you can see that most brine areas, those are the areas in pink. They're located along the inner rim, so closer to the remnant brine pool. Here you have conditions that are much more favorable for evaporite crust formation. And so in a sense, we're listening to what the lake wants to be, but with some limitations. So for example, if you look over to the neighbors of T29 in that green area, green indicates managed vegetation dust control areas. That works really well over by that shoreline. The vegetation just kind of takes off and it's been expanding into the shallow flooding areas. But management isn't just about dust control. That's obviously, my agency's prime objective, but we also have to manage habitat for the different birds who they really enjoy those shallow flooding areas. So there has to be a certain amount of shallow flooding present in the operations in order to maintain that harmony between the dust control objective and the habitat objective. We also have certain areas that are protected for cultural resources. That's super important. So in those areas, there's limited, modified, or sometimes no dust control methods that can be applied. So to understand how T29 and its neighbors have moved through these different approaches, it helps to take a step back and think again about the processes that are actually controlling dust. And I'm going to walk through this table really briefly. So on the first column, we have key conditions related to the creation of dust. So we have surface moisture, we have surface roughness, and then protective cover, whether that's like a brine crust or gravel, something that we put on top of it. And then in that last row, we have a management focus. For systems like Great Salt Lake or Mono Lake, when there's enough water present in the system, conditions in the first column are largely supported by the system itself. So obviously climate and water water use both play a role in the level of the lake, but water level sets the baseline. At Owens Lake, that baseline is gone. Surface conditions have to be maintained through engineered solutions, whether that's flooding, tillage, vegetation, gravel, and brine. And that leads to the key difference between Great Salt Lake and Mono Lake and Owens Lake. At Great Salt Lake and Mono Lake, management can be focused on raising and then maintaining a lake level. No problem, that's not hard at all, right? But at Owens Lake, it's about engineering surface conditions that minimize dust emissions. And this has to be done acre by acre. I walked you through just T29, this little square in this giant area that is full of engineered solutions. It's a lot to think about. And even T29 still isn't perfect as brine. We have different issues about sand coming in off the berms that are along the sides of the dust control area, and that affects the formation of evaporate crust. There's another area that's, I'm not going to tell you exactly where it is, but it's a little bit down the ways, and it's working perfectly as brine, but they actually had to flood it this past year because there's brine bandits out on the loose, and there's these guys pulling up and harvesting these crystals and taking them off in U-Hauls. So I think there's something on like Etsy that's like Owens Lake healing crystals. I'm not endorsing purchasing those, but the shallow flooding backup is there for a reason. We just didn't know it might be for crystal gatherers as well. So anyway, a takeaway is that there's this choice, right? There's a choice between pride, thinking Great Salt Lake won't face the same trade-offs. You could push the work further and further into the future, or you could give the system the water it needs to do the work for you. Another way to think about this is that when lake processes are intact, you're sort of in an autopilot mode. Of course, it's not true autopilot because again, you still have to do all the work to shepherd the water to the lake in a changing climate. Again, yeah, that's complicated stuff, of course. But once the water is there, the system is doing most of the stabilizing work for you. At Owens Lake, you've moved into manual mode. Each of these conditions has to be engineered with dozens of people working on this every single day in perpetuity. So I started by calling Owens Lake a cautionary tale. I guess I was also shouting it at you. I'm really sorry about that. And it is. It's a cautionary tale of what happens when a lake stops doing the work. And we've created impossible conditions for it to do that. And then we have to take over. And we have a lot of responsibilities that follow. The evolution of T29 shows what this looks like in practice. There was never a single solution to T29 or any other part of the lake, but a sequence of adjustments balancing dust control, water use, cost, and also habitat and cultural values. Things haven't always worked perfectly over the years, but we have gone as Jeff kindly pointed out, from the largest source of dust pollution in the country to a place that is nearing attainment of national ambient air quality standards. And that's really something to be proud of. Great Salt Lake is at a different point, but it's facing similar decisions. And those decisions aren't just technical. They're about what you choose to prioritize moving forward. Finding balance in a changing lake means letting go of a little bit of pride and recognizing how much work the system can do if you let it. Thank you. I just want to point out that I found out that that dog is named Mono, not Mono, but Mono, because he just only had one eye. Any questions? I don't know much about Mono. I found it in a file cabinet in my office.
Thanks. Mom.
Hi, Brenda.
Hi. Do I have to turn it on? No, it's on. Thank you for that. So interesting. I wanted to ask about your brine, and I'm curious, where does the water come from to make the brine, and where do the salts come from to make the brine, and how do you concoct your brine recipe? What's it made of, and are there different recipes in different ponds?
I'm so glad you asked that. We were having a meeting the other day, and I asked that question because I realized I didn't know it yet. And I exactly asked for the recipe, and somebody said, you know, it's not exactly like a Gordon Ramsay recipe. It's more like a Swedish chef recipe. Basically, a lot of the water, they're not mixing, you don't have like a lab where they're mixing a certain amount of salinity. What they're mostly doing is rerouting water that's drained off of the managed vegetation areas and just kind of giving it, they've called it a brine splash or a bath. So it's not, to my knowledge, done very quantitatively. It'd be really interesting if it went in that direction, but at this point it's mainly drainage from the managed veg areas.
Great presentation. Silly question. Can you speak to the costs? I once heard that this was one of the most expensive environmental projects ever, costing on the order of $2 billion with $75 million a year. Is that real, or can you speak more about that?
Yes. Yes. You are correct. It is one of the most expensive environmental projects, and it has cost, I think at this point, over $3 billion. With obviously annual expenditures both for LEDWP's operations and then for the regulatory agency covering air quality. So there's a lot of people, boots on the ground at Owens Lake, continuously monitoring and upholding operations.
I won't get the designation right, but is it an important bird area in a section? Or there's something about, would you talk a little about that, please?
Yeah, when I was showing that managed veg area up in the northeast corner of the lake, there's a lot of birds that go there, and we have, a lot of recreation value at Owens Lake. I know that might be surprising to some people in this room because you do think of it as like it's covered in gravel, it's nasty. It is still beautiful, and then there are people who come to the lake to enjoy birding and duck hunting, so maybe not as many as Great Salt Lake, but it's a very important place to a lot of people, and it's still enjoyable too. James.
This might be a kind of a dumb question because I don't really know. Are there like any like snowy plovers or anything that are hanging out on like the playa, and have there been any studies that have looked at like how these are affecting, like these different treatment methods affect that habitat for the plovers?
We are required to take snowy plover safety training on a regular basis. So yes, there are snowy plovers, and We have to be really mindful. I get an email update with nest locations, so you can be really careful while driving or just not drive on certain roads at all. I don't know if that was obvious from the map too. At Great Salt Lake, we do not have like roads running through Farmington Bay, but there's roads to access all of the different dust control cells. They're not always the best things to drive on, but yeah, we have a lot of nests that we have to look out for there. And as for research, I'm not sure, but let's follow up and talk about it more. Thanks so much.
Okay. Good afternoon. Thanks. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Marcela Castellino, and I work for Manomet Conservation Sciences. And today I'm going to talk to you about science synergy and saline lakes and how we are growing these, advancing these hemispheric conservation networks. And I come from a very big saline lake that is in South America, Laguna Mar Chiquita, and depending on the time of the year and the water level, that lake can be as large or even larger than Great Salt Lake. So it's a very big lake. And we are apart because we are in South America, North America, but still we are very connected to many things. We are very similar systems. We have very dynamic system, amazing biodiversity, and also we have challenges that we have to overcome, very similar. And we also are connected through these amazing birds. The Wilson's Fowler population that is migrating between these two places, these two wetlands every year. And the phalaropes are the living link that is connecting us and are the link that is behind all the work that I'm going to show you today. So my talk is about some of the updates of our work during the last 2 years, and I'm going to focus my talk in 4 main areas: and research, monitoring, also management and policies, and what are we doing to expand the conservation community around the saline lakes. This is a very high-level kind of update, but we'll be happy to follow up with anyone interested in any of the topics. And I'll start with the Wilson's Fowler research on tracking and connectivity. Since 2024, we made great progress in understanding the migratory ecology of these species. We have a collaborative project between partners from Canada, the US, and Argentina, and we were able to tag over 40 birds so far, and we are already seeing some data. We are using radio tags because these birds are very tiny, and we are already, like I said, receiving some information. There is another project here at Great Salt Lake that is led by Tracy Avery, and we are also working very closely. They are supporting our work in Mar Chiquita, and we are also working to get together with data sets to come up with a more comprehensive analysis on the migratory movements of the species. But we are not only tagging the birds, we are also working on expanding the MOTUS network because we tag the birds, but we need the receivers to kind of like detect the birds. And as you can see on the map, at North America, the network is really well expanded and installed a lot of stations, but in South America, the case is different, and especially if you look at the inland wetlands where the phalaropes rely on, like the saline lakes. So we are working on expanded network. Since 2024, we installed 2 new MOTUS stations at Laguna Mar Chiquita, and we have plans to install more in the next couple of years, not only at Laguna Mar Chiquita, but also at other saline lakes in South America. And these are only 2 examples of some of the data that we are starting to see from the birds that were tagged, so it's very exciting. And this is the first time that we are seeing actual connections that we knew that existed, but now we have the data and the proof that the birds are connecting us. And another important thing behind this project is this is a very collaborative project, and since 2024, we also conducted 5 international exchanges between different professionals that are working on this project. So these are not only site visits. This is professionals and people that are traveling to other sites to participate in field work and also to learn from each other. We have different techniques, different challenges, so we are making our work better by working together. And I'm very happy to share that next June, we will have one of our team members from Mar Chiquita coming here to work with Tracy Aviary team and the follow-up campaign, so we're very excited about that. Another area that we made significant progress is in doing some analysis and trying to understand habitat selections of Wilson's phalaropes in South America, mainly at Laguna Mar Chiquita. We conduct regular surveys at Laguna Mar Chiquita, and in parallel, we are taking water samples in different points of the lake. And our goal is to try to understand through physicochemical characteristics, understand how those factors can influence the habitat and the distribution and the presence of the species. So since 2024, we're taking samples, but we are not, doing this very intensively at Laguna Mar Chiquita, but we are not kind of keeping it there. We are expanding since 2026. We expanded this to other saline lakes. And this is a very also exciting project for us. We are very happy to collaborate with amazing people like Christine and Brenda from the University of Utah. And we have plans to expand that to other saline lakes across South America, and in the future to integrate the water chemistry with bird abundances and also remote sensing data to understand better what are the environmental drivers that are kind of like dictating the habitat selection and distribution of the phalaropes in South America. Now I will move to monitoring, and I will share with you 3 main areas that we made progress since 2024. The first one is the International Wilson's Phalarope Survey. We call it that way because we are surveying the entire non-breeding range for the species at one window time, 1 week, 10 days, simultaneously. We are covering 4 countries, Chile, Argentina, Bolivia, and Peru. And we are visiting saline lakes and the high Andean wetlands and in the high Andean region, but also in the lowlands, in Argentina mainly. And our main goal with these surveys, this is the 2nd edition. This is something that we do every 5 years. The 1st edition was in 2020. 2025 was a success too. And the main goal is to understand the global population size and trends, so to a global scale during the non-breeding season. And for example, in this last survey, we visited over 600 sites, and phalaropes were present in only a few sites. The proportion is really low, so this is also highlighting the importance of only very specific sites for this species. But now going from the more regional, like non-breeding scale to more regional scale, we are also wondering what is happening with the phalaropes during the non-breeding season, because the other effort was in 1 week. It's kind of like a snapshot, but we want to understand what is happening during the non-breeding season, and that's why we are conducting regular monthly surveys across 4 key areas that are all in Argentina, but one is in the high Andes, the other ones are in the lowlands. And our main goal with this is to understand habitat use and dynamics at a landscape scale at non-breeding grounds. And basically it's understand how the birds are moving and responding to different habitat characteristics or change in the condition of the habitats. And with this information, we can also start to analyze with other variables like migratory timing, phenology, or even environmental variables to understand what is happening with the birds and what are the important sites that we need to keep in our radar. And we are also zooming in now at Laguna Mar Chiquita. This is, remember, the most important non-breeding site for Wilson's phalarope. It's a very large lake, so the only way that we can do surveys there is aerial surveys, and that is something that we share with only one other site in the world, that is with Great Salt Lake. So we are the only 2 sites that share this challenge of estimate big flocks of Wilson's phalarope from the air in a very vast area. So we have been supporting surveys there for 6 seasons now. But in the last 2 seasons, we improved a lot our methodology, and we are now able to refine our data and understand better how the follow-ups are used in the site. And then again, combining with information about habitat, we can understand why they are using the site and what are the drivers behind that. So this is our main goal here, and also we are using this information to kind of support the development of the management plan for the protected area. There is a national park that is recently created in 2022. Another thing that I want to share with you related to monitoring is that in Mar Chiquita, we are facing with a new challenge. That is our historical estimator. There is Pablo Micheluti on the red jacket. He's nearing retirement, so with that, we are facing the challenge of what are we going to do, who is going to count the follow-ups, and how we are going to kind of continue the data series without losing the historic data, but being able to create new data. So we implemented a new transition protocol that we are training new estimators. We have 2 trainees. One of them is member of the national park, so she's a staff, and that will create local capacity that is embedded in the agencies that are managing the site. And we are super, super excited because this protocol that we are launching last season is also opening the door for an international opportunity, because our trainees will come to Great Salt Lake next June to fly and to participate in the follow-up service with the local team, and that will be really great, not only for them to improve their skills, but also as a team and understanding our global trends and the global population, like understand how surveys are done and what are the sources of biases and how can we adjust better our methodologies. Okay, now I'm moving to the management decisions and policies arena. So I want to briefly share that during 2025, we were participating in the workshops and the participatory process of the development of the management plan for Ancenusa National Park. So this was a very collaborative effort, included many local partners there, and we were all working together to kind of like in the definition of the focal management elements. Those are the elements that we are going to focus for the management of the area that we are kind of prioritizing. And we are, I want to share out of the 5 focal management elements that were defined, 2 are kind of really important for us, like Wilson's follow-up, and also like the wetland, or kind of like the water, right? And this is also result of our presence on the site and working for several years with the authorities to make them realize the importance of the site for the species. So we are very, very happy that they are considered. And after that, we were defining what to measure and how to measure to being able to evaluate the effectiveness of the conservation actions in the future. So this was all a very kind of local process for the Ancenusa National Park, but we didn't want to keep it local because we know the Mar Chiquita is part of an international network of saline lakes. There are other partners with a lot of experience, with different perspectives for working in different contexts. So we wanted to extend that invitation to have feedback and new ideas and kind of discuss, validate, or maybe improve our approach. So last December in Laguna Mar Chiquita, we host workshops that we call it technical roundtables, and basically was to get together with partners from other saline lakes, including many from Great Salt Lake, and through a series of exercises, we were kind of reviewing together and brainstorming and having some feedback about all the things that we already defined, and was really good for us to kind of improve our local process. And this was very important, not only for a technical perspective, but it was also a catalyst for local progress, because international events like those can help us locally to kind of like keep the conservation priorities, or keep our work in the political agenda, in the local political agenda. And also, during these exchanges and during these days that we were working together, that opened the door to new collaborations, very exciting new collaborations, locally, nationally, and internationally. I'm sure that we will be able to share exciting results in the future. So that's also a really good outcome of the meetings. And now I'm going to the last part of the talk, the last area that I want to share, that is expanding the conservation community. And I want to talk about how we are working to connect the saline lakes through education. This is a project that is very close to our hearts, and it's called Experiencia Ambientalia. This is an environmental educational program that is designed to empower young people from the different communities to become environmental leaders. And this is a very kind of unique program because it's an experience, like the name. Because the students are learning about the wetlands, the ecology, the birds, but they are also involved in many, many other activities. They do field trips, they do science camps, they do different activities, like for example, they have to design projects and present it to their communities in science or project fairs. They are involved in art contests. They are doing field outings. So it's very, very kind of a unique experience. And during all these things, the students are not only developing a really deep connection with their own sites, but they are also developing connections with each other. So that's also very important for us. This program started as a very kind of like a local initiative back in 2021 at Laguna Mar Chiquita, but now has expanded to 5 more lakes across the hemisphere, thanks to the support to amazing partners like Manomet Committee. And we want this network to keep growing, so we want more partners, more people doing this program. So if you are interested, more people we have partners in Great Salt Lake, but we will be happy to welcome more. So if you are interested, you can talk to Marina. Marina's here. She's the heart and soul behind this program, and she will be more than happy to talk to you and make this happen. Okay, and this is kind of like to wrapping up my presentation. I wanted to mention the International Follow-up Working Group. This is a group that is behind many, if not all of the efforts that I shared with you during the talk. This is a group of people that was established in 2019 as a collaborative platform for individuals and organizations that are working with the follow-up species, although I have to say it's a little biased to Wilson's follow-up, but it's for the 3 follow-up species. And since 2024, we had an in-person meeting at the Laguna Mar Chiquita that was very important, because at that meeting we were able to create a shared vision and also to kind of define our priorities and next steps to guide our work. And since then, we were also able to enhance the group structure. We now have an international leadership team. We have an international steering committee, and we have specific subcommittees. So the group is very active, and it's an open platform for everybody. And we share information, we coordinate monitoring efforts, we identify research gaps, and we support conservation actions across the flyway. So if anyone is interested in joining the group, just let us know. Because we believe in the power of collaboration. And that led me to my last slide. That is very thankful for all the support that we have with all these amazing partners across the hemisphere. Without them, it wouldn't be possible to do this job. And with that, I just want to add that we are focused on Wilson's follow-up, because this is a very important species. Within Manomet, we are very committed to work on reversing the decline of the shorebird species, and we have 5 flagship species. One of them is Wilson's follow-up, and that's why we are so committed and doing all this work through the hemisphere, from education, monitoring, research. It's a very comprehensive approach. And we are doing it hemispherically because we wanted to kind of cover the entire life cycle of a migratory species. And yeah, that's why it's one of our priorities. Thank you for listening, and that's all for me. any questions?
Not a question, but a comment. I just wanted to thank you and your sister and all the people in your community and the network that you have created between all of you to really change lives on the ground at Mar Chiquita. And also we're seeing it around Mono Lake, Lee Vining, the Eastern Sierra, and the young people that are getting involved. And sometimes it takes some nudging, but it really is making a difference. And Ryan, you're involved in it too. But thank you for your wonderful work, and may it continue. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for your work and your support. Thank you so much.
Hi, Marcela. Thanks for
Hey.
that talk. It was great. Is this on? Okay. I was curious about hearing more about the December 2025 when you brought people from all the different lakes together and how the Laguna Mar Chiquita community was able to integrate those ideas, the value of bringing in all those international perspectives. Just curious to hear that more.
Yeah, kind of like the results of those meetings. Yeah, we are working very closely with the National Park Administration. Is the organization that is leading this process of the development of the national park. So they are kind of our main point of contact. But we are very happy because a lot of progress has been made. Because during those meetings, new ideas were sparked, like new kind of like directions to take on different things. And there are already some projects that are happening related to hydrology, for example, with a local team from the university. I think that it was a very productive. It gave us a lot to think, and we are start seeing the results. We also created some documents that we are socializing, and we are working with the local authorities to kind of keep moving the process of advancing in the management plan for the area. So yeah, it was really, really productive for all of us. Okay, thank you.